Before his death, Apollo 11's third astronaut, Michael Collins, shocked the world. "Moon is not what you think." A cool comment contradicting all NASA announcements. "I would have liked to walk on the moon, but that seemed inconsequential at the moment. I enjoyed my flight duties." Collins' findings could alter our view of the universe and ourselves. Prepare to see the whole truth in this video. Michael Collins' 1974 astronaut biography Carrying the Fire is one of the few historians have called pinpoint accurate. He wrote plainly without affection. Book started as technical report. Reading further, readers realized it was also a quiet confession from a man who had seen Earth from farther away than anyone else. Collins remarked, "I feel very much a part of what is happening on the moon, not lonely or abandoned. Not feeling left behind." He felt himself as essential to the journey. A few pages later, he wrote a sentence that alarmed scientists. "Moon is uninteresting." A dispassionate evaluation that almost dismissed millions' feelings towards the moon. Collins believed it was true. He saw its orbit. After being shut off from all human sounds, it realized that its beauty was only in distance. In later meetings, he said the moon was a technical destination, not spiritual. Reaching it was an engineering test for Collins, but exploration was about knowing human limits. His changing mentality was clarified by subsequent interviews. Collins told the Smithsonian, "I'm a Mars man all the way." He boldly told Fox News we should aim for Mars when asked about returning to the moon. "More lunar expeditions delay us." Collins spoke about more than Mars. Many of his personal writings focused on Earth. Earth was no longer his starting place, but his destination. After the 1980s, he talked less about Apollo. Collins often addressed the environment, education, and humanity's responsibility to the world at commemorations. His colleagues called him the thoughtful astronaut, who valued significance over glory. Collins wrote while Armstrong remained silent and Aldrin boasted. The page helped him overcome a loneliness no one could completely understand, that of being between life and nothingness. Over time, his beliefs became more philosophical. He saw the universe as a mirror for humanity. At a 1994 science conference, he said we go out to learn how to return. He believed that seeing Earth from space humbled people, not strengthened them. Michael Collins came to Earth from another world after Apollo 11. He returned 50 years later with the calm gaze of a man who has seen Earth from the farthest edge. The world was stunned as he made his final confession. After 50 years, fragments. The 50th anniversary of Apollo 11's lunar landing was in 2019. Michael Collins attended commemorative events at 88, his walk leisurely and his voice deep yet steady. He told NPR that mankind landed on the moon 50 years ago. "No earthling has ever been so alone." The sentence represented the absolute seclusion of a man who had been 300,000 kilometers from everyone. Collins often became mute as hosts recalled 1969 during serious events. He spoke about frailty under the headlights, not splendor. Earth became the only home, no longer divided. In his final public address at the Kennedy Library, he did not discuss fear or loneliness, just that he never regretted anything. Collins tranquilly showed listeners that he was more than an astronaut, he represented quiet perseverance and service. On April 28, 2021, his family announced the sad news. The statement said she died peacefully surrounded by family after a brave cancer battle. In an Air Force condolence letter to Apollo 11, President Joe Biden said Michael Collins served. The words seemed to end a life of commitment that never sought attention. Collins avoided attention during Apollo, according to co-workers. He shunned commercial endorsements, rarely appeared on talk shows, and never exploited his reputation. Collins left a unique Earth view despite his silence. "I've seen what I needed to see," he said softly in a 2020 interview when asked if he would fly again. "Nothing compares to watching Earth shrink in the window. We don't need to go far to enjoy its beauty, but sometimes only from considerable distance we understand how valuable it is." Collins spent his final years with his family away from the media. Gardens, reading, and writing to aeronautical students were his hobbies. He stated, "Every time you look up, remember that someone once looked down and saw you all as one," in his farewell letter published after his death. Short, yet full of the energy of a man who has crossed the Earth-nothingness line. Collins' death ended an era and raised further questions. He spent his life staring at the moon. What did he think? The pages he spent his old age writing provide the answer. Those were not heroic remarks, but a confession from a lonely person. The rehearsal in space. Michael Collins was born in Rome to military parents on October 31, 1930. His father, Major General James Lawton Collins, served in Europe during World War I and taught him discipline early on. Collins' upbringing was marked by his father's military post moves. After attending St. Albans in Washington, D.C., he attended West Point, where service and precision were his guiding values. Collins graduated in 1952 and joined the U.S. Air Force, began pushing human limitations in space. He became a notable Air Force test pilot. Collins worked with airplanes that were higher, quicker, and more risky than anything else at Edwards Experimental Test Pilot School. "Every test flight is a small step between life and death," he remarked. Collins learned composure there, which saved him and his crewmates in the weightless emptiness. Collins was chosen by NASA for the third astronaut class in 1963 from over 2,700 applications. He was one of 14 applicants with the best physical condition, aviation skills, and attention. Only 2 words were written beside his name in NASA's selection file: calm mind. An examiner recounted the man who could keep his voice steady while a plane spun out of control. Collins became backup pilot for the Gemini 7 mission after training, but his big break came in July 1966 when he joined John Young on the Gemini 10 voyage. To prepare for lunar landings, they tested rendezvous and docking systems. In 70 hours in orbit, Collins did 2 EVAs lasting over 2.5 hours, an unparalleled challenge at the time. In his flight log, he noted, "Amazing view." The first human to float in space expressed his feelings in a brief statement. He set a human distance record of 763 kilometers. Collins remembered that the silence between motions taught him the concept of ultimate solitude. He saw space as the hardest test for the mind, not romantic. He described it as a rehearsal for silence, where every motion had to be calculated in milliseconds and the slightest mistake might drive a body into eternal darkness. NASA considered Gemini 10 a key step in the Apollo program. Fuel usage exceeded expectations, yet the mission was perfect in engineering and discipline. Collins and Young returned safely with data that helped NASA design future missions. After the flight, he got the Air Force Distinguished Service Medal and FAA Exceptional Service Medal. Collins thought the greatest prize wasn't medals. It was realizing there was no noise, no barriers, only your heartbeat. He learned his first lesson about the balance between machine and man when he realized that technology could elevate mankind but only courage could save them. Collins noted in a brief NASA interview following the trip that the mind saves, not the gadget. The short sentence became his lifelong principle. Collins' essays were not merely memories but reflections on space adventure. "We can leave Earth, but not understand it," he remarked. He finally appeared in public in his latter years to explain what the world had missed. Earth's gatekeeper in July 1969 stared up to the moon. Michael Collins sat alone in the command module. He was hundreds of kilometers from Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin in Columbia. While they prepared to step onto the silver-gray surface, Collins quietly circled the moon's far side, where radio transmissions were completely cut off. In each orbit, he spent 17 minutes alone in the abyss. "I am alone now," he wrote while carrying the fire. Those few phrases may have best described human solitude. As he slipped behind the moon, he became the only Earthling without a home. Years later, Collins acknowledged the loneliness as part of the job in an interview. Each time communication was lost, he knew he was at the edge between life and stillness. Collins instead focused on his seclusion. He had to keep Columbia in perfect orbit, communicate, and rescue his crewmates. Labored silently, checking every control panel number while the world watched Armstrong and Collins. He realized that even a few seconds delay or degrees drift could lock all 3 in space forever. When the White House prepared a speech for the worst-case situation, fate decreed that the men who explored the moon in peace would lay there. Those icy lines were secret to read only if everything failed. It was known to Collins. He understood that if the lunar module failed, he would be the only barrier between Earth and empty space. Collins noted in his flight record, "The moon is lifeless. Beautiful but ominous." He saw no magic, simply a cold, quiet world without life. He saw the moon's beauty in Earth's light reflecting on its dead surface. He claimed the moon was a mirror for humanity to observe themselves, not a place to live. At Mission Control in Houston, the team held their breath whenever Columbia disappeared from radar. The lonesome blackout, the stillness gap. Collins never missed a gearbox. He modified engines, physically checked pressure, measured angles, and fuel lines to keep Columbia on course for the second. NASA's technical report listed only one short-line command module that worked. Collins started the rendezvous system after Armstrong and Aldrin's lunar module, Eagle, returned to orbit. It was the mission's most fraught moment. A single error would have launched his crewmates into space forever. The signal came after a few minutes of stillness. Collins said, "Roger, Eagle. How are you?" No cheering. Nothing exciting. A steady voice like a coworker welcoming after a long workday. The three met in space and returned to Earth. Collins checked every system before smiling after landing. Michael Collins left NASA and the Moon after Apollo 11. Instead of flying again, he chose another way. Collins became Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs in 1969. He worked at the crossroads of politics, journalism, and the public, far from the confined ship where science and discipline ruled. In his inaugural State Department speech, he said exploration should be the ultimate diplomacy to learn before conquering. Collins believed space travel could help humanity comprehend each other, not just advance technology. Collins labored quietly in Foggy Bottom, the State Department headquarters, as he did in space. His aim was science communication in space program image, not fame or grandeur. He constantly stressed honesty and responsibility in memos. He said an astronaut would pick diplomacy because space is a message, not a contest. Collins departed the State Department to become NASM's first director in 1971. He called it Apollo's earthly continuation. Skepticism was rising in America following the Vietnam War. Science resources were dwindling, and exploration had waned. Collins had to build a museum to restore faith in knowledge in flight. He spent most of his time campaigning for money, monitoring architectural plans, and checking technical details. Collins presented detailed blueprints to Congress during construction, which began on the National Mall in 1972. He inspected the location every morning like a spacecraft before takeoff, according to colleagues. 4 years later, on July 1, 1976, the museum opened at the U.S. Bicentennial. Gerald Ford cut the ribbon while Collins waited behind the podium. He simply stated that knowledge was a gift of humanity when called to speak. The new museum became a national cultural monument fast. Millions visited Collins' actual spacecraft, the Columbia Command Module. He personally supervised its shipment and presentation at the center under a reflected light dome. Collins went from space pilot to memory keeper. The museum was a showcase for technology and a refuge for exploration, which he valued more than technology. Everything from the Wright Flyer to the Apollo spacesuits showed him guts and curiosity. NASM became one of the world's most visited museums during his direction, exceeding Congress's expectations. Collins resigned in 1978 after 7 years as leader. The museum had a steady management system, finances, and international renown after his death. Staff had a little farewell party. Collins simply grinned and replied, "I'll take some time for stillness," when asked what he would do next. "I owe myself." He left Washington for a peaceful life without cameras. But wherever he went, his legacy lived on in the eyes of youngsters standing before Columbia and future generations looking up at the sky. Collins had fulfilled his duty as history's gatekeeper, protecting the past and enabling the future. Collins' experience as a pilot, ambassador, and heritage guardian showed that exploring the universe is about comprehending it, not abandoning Earth. When he left, the emptiness was not just in space but in human understanding, that sometimes greatness is not in lunar footprints but in the stare back towards Earth. Share this video if Michael Collins' tale makes you see Earth as smaller and more precious. To be updated on the upcoming cosmic travels of truth, memory, and human legacy, subscribe and turn on the notification bell.